My mother stood at the head of the table, smiled at my husband, and pointed to the empty chair beside him. "I saved this one for Camille," she said. "The woman he should have married. Let him remember what he actually missed." Then she looked at me, her own daughter, on her own birthday, and added, "Some of us just aren't the kind of women men regret losing." My sister raised her glass and laughed. Guests shifted in their seats. No one said a word. I waited for Nathan to stop it. He stood instead, buttoned his jacket, took my hand in front of everyone. "Thank you," he said, voice steady. My mother glowed. "For what?" "For making the decision we couldn't make." Her face changed. "What decision?" He didn't raise his voice. "You'll find out tomorrow. My name is Daisy Russell. I'm 34 years old." And that was the night my mother finally said the quiet part out loud. Welcome back to Hidden Shadows, where quiet women stop swallowing other people's cruelty. If that kind of justice is your thing, settle in. Tell me where you're listening from, and subscribe, because tomorrow changed everything. Let me take you back, though, because a moment like that one doesn't come out of nowhere. It's built, brick by brick, over years, by people who are sure they'll never be handed the bill. I count things for a living. That's the simplest way to explain what I do. I'm a controller for a chain of health clinics called Brightwater Health, which means every dollar that moves through 11 offices passes under my eye before it settles. I can look at a spreadsheet the size of a wall and tell you within a minute where the money is lying to you. People trust me with numbers because numbers don't flatter me, and I don't flatter them back. It's a strange thing to be that careful with everyone else's ledger and that careless with your own. For most of my life, the one account I never balanced was the one with my family. I gave, and I didn't write it down, because writing it down would have meant admitting how lopsided it was, and I wasn't ready to know. Nathan knew. My husband has always seen the parts of me I try to keep behind glass. The night this story really begins, months before the birthday, on an ordinary Tuesday in the winter, he was standing at our stove making the kind of dinner you make when you're trying to say something without saying it. Something warm. Something patient. "You reconciled 3 clinics today," he said, not turning around. "And you still can't tell me what your own mother owes you." "Family isn't a ledger, Nathan." He set the spoon down. "With your family, it always was. You just kept the books in your head so nobody could see the total." I didn't answer because he wasn't wrong, and because I'd have to open a drawer in myself I kept locked. Instead, I looked at the small brass key hanging on the hook by our door, threaded onto a strip of worn leather, my father's keychain. He'd carried it for 30 years, that soft brown fob gone dark from his hands. And when he died, I kept it, and I put the key to the family house on it. And I never questioned why I still had a key to a house I supposedly only visited. That house is the whole story, so let me tell you about it. It sits in Westerville, a quiet suburb on the north side of Columbus, Ohio. Brick front, a maple in the yard, a porch step my father laid himself the summer I turned 12. He mixed the mortar too wet, and one brick always sat a little proud of the others, and for the rest of his life, he'd tap it with his shoe when he came home, like he was greeting an old mistake he'd decided to love. My mother has lived in that house for almost 40 years. She hosts every holiday there, every birthday, every occasion that lets her stand at the head of a table, and everyone in my family calls it, without thinking, my mother's house. I never corrected them. Keep that in your pocket. It matters later. My father, Gerald Fenwick, died in 2018. A heart attack on a Sunday, gone before the ambulance turned the corner. He was the kind of man who absorbed shocks so the rest of us didn't have to feel them, and when he was gone, the house did what houses do when the person holding it up disappears. It started to slide. He'd handled the money. My mother had never once looked at the mortgage, and after he died, she couldn't bring herself to. Bills went into a drawer. The drawer filled. By 2019, the bank was sending the kind of letters that come in yellow envelopes with words on them like default and acceleration, and my mother, who could talk for an hour about a neighbor's divorce, said nothing to anyone. I found out because I'm the one who notices. I was at the house dropping off groceries and I opened the wrong drawer looking for a pen. That's the thing about the daughter nobody respects. She's the one who's actually paying attention. Nathan and I had been married less than a year then. We were still a new thing, still learning how to disagree without flinching, and I brought this to him, with my heart in my throat, because I knew what I was asking. I was asking a man I'd married 8 months earlier to pour himself into a house that had never once welcomed him. "How bad?" he said. Not a question. He'd already read my face. Bad enough that in a few months a stranger owns it, and she's on it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said the thing I married him for, even though he'd spend the next 6 years half regretting how easy he made it sound. "Then we don't let that happen. Here's what we did, and I'm going to say it plainly, because the plainness is the point. We didn't lend my mother money in hope. We didn't co-sign anything. We sat with an attorney and a lender, and in the winter after my father died, Nathan and I bought the house. We paid off the defaulted mortgage. We took out a new one in our 2 names. The title transferred out of my mother's name and into ours, recorded at the county like every real transaction is, and my mother signed every page. She stayed. That was the whole design. She would keep living in the home she'd raised us in, rent-free, for as long as she wanted, and we would carry it. About $2,200 a month, all in. The mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, and every time the furnace coughed or a shingle blew off, that too. Over 6 years it came to roughly $165,000. I know the number to the dollar because I'm me, and because for a long time it was the only proof I had that I'd ever mattered to these people at all. The day she signed, she didn't read the pages. She held the pen and looked at me over her glasses and said, "We'll just call it a formality. It's still my house." "Of course, Mom," I said. Of course. 2 small words. I've thought about them more than almost anything else I've ever said. Because in that moment I made a choice I didn't understand I was making. I decided that letting her keep the feeling of ownership was a kindness. That taking the truth from her, that her daughter and her daughter's husband now held the deed, would be cruel, would embarrass her, would strip something from a woman who'd already lost her husband. So I let her call it her house. And she mistook my kindness for her ownership, for 6 years. I need you to understand that the birthday dinner wasn't the first cruelty. If it had been, I might have laughed it off. Cruelty is easy to dismiss when it's a single event. It's the pattern that wears the finish off you. There was the Thanksgiving where she introduced my sister to a new neighbor as my daughter Brooke, who married a lawyer, and introduced me, standing right there as, and this is Daisy. No verb, no noun. Just a name and a small wave of the hand, the way you'd point out a coat closet. There was the time she moved my birthday dinner, a different year, a smaller wound, to a Sunday that worked for Brooke, without asking me. And when I said I'd made plans, she said, "Well, Brooke has a life, Daisy, you'll manage." There was the way she talked about Nathan. My husband is a project engineer. He builds things that stay up. He can look at a set of drawings and see the building the way I see a spreadsheet. And he is, quietly, very good at what he does. My mother turned that into a punchline. "Brooke married a lawyer," she liked to say, as if it were the opening line of a joke. "Daisy married a man who measures things." I used to let those slide off me. But there was one evening, a couple of years ago, when Nathan heard it land. Really heard it. The tone underneath the words. And something in his face closed like a door. We were driving home. He didn't speak for 2 exits. Then he said, "That's the first time I actually heard how she talks to you. You've heard it before. I heard the words. I didn't hear that she means them. He gripped the wheel. How long has it been like this? Since before you, I said. That was the night my husband started to change. Not all at once. He's not a man who slams doors. But he started watching. And a man who starts watching a thing eventually sees all of it. What he saw, more than the insults, was the dependency underneath them. Because that's the part that never made it into the family story. The winter before last, the furnace in the house died in a cold snap. The old one my father had nursed along for years, and my mother called me at work, not to ask, but to inform. It's freezing in here, she said, as if the temperature were a decision I'd made. You'll take care of it. Not can you. Not, I'm sorry to bother you. You'll take care of it. I left a budget meeting, found an HVAC company that could come the same day, and paid $6,000 for a new unit before dinner. My mother's only comment when the crew finally left was that they'd tracked snow on her rug and that I should have found someone faster. I didn't tell her the $6,000 came out of the same account as her mortgage. I didn't tell her anything. I just added it to the ledger in my head and drove home. But Nathan was there when I got the invoice, and he looked at it for a long moment and said quietly, "She thinks the heat just comes on when she's cold. She has no idea there's a person on the other end of it." That was the first time either of us said out loud what the arrangement actually was. Not help. Not family, taking care of family. A person, on the other end of it, keeping the lights on for people who'd convinced themselves the lights had never been off. My sister Brooke is 3 years older than me and has spent every one of those years being the one the light falls on. She is 37 now. 2 years ago her marriage ended. The lawyer, as it happens, though no one in my family updates the introduction. And she moved into a rented apartment she can't quite afford and started telling people, in that bright way she has, that she'd probably move back into Mom's house eventually, to take care of her, to keep it in the family. She'd say it in front of me. She'd say it like I wasn't sitting across the table having quietly wired the mortgage payment that morning. Brooke isn't cruel the way my mother is cruel. My mother believes things. Brooke just benefits from what my mother believes. As long as I was the lesser daughter, the one who married down, the one who managed, the one who didn't have a life, Brooke got to be the son. That arrangement paid her, and she owed me money on top of it. $8,000 from a loan 2 years back. The word love appended to a Venmo note where the payment never was. She has never mentioned it. Neither have I. That too is a kind of ledger. Here's what makes all of this matter, and I want to be careful, because I'm giving you the shape of it before I give you the proof. Nathan and I had, more than once, sat at our own kitchen table and talked about stopping, about selling the house, about stepping back from a family that treated our generosity as a birthright and our presence as a burden. We'd talk, and we'd get right up to the edge of it, and then I'd say some version of the same sentence every time. If we sell it, I become the daughter who put her widowed mother on the street. And Nathan would say gently, or the daughter who stopped paying to be treated like this. You keep letting her pick which one you are? He was right. I just wasn't ready. There's a specific weight that sits on people like me, the ones who've decided their worth is in what they carry. Putting it down doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like proving everyone right about how selfish you always were underneath. So we didn't put it down. We kept talking, and we kept not finishing the conversation, and the months went by. Then 2 things happened in the same season, and everything that had been theoretical got a deadline. The first was a text from my mother in the middle of a workday that I glanced at and almost didn't register. Some man came about the furnace. Did you send him? I stared at it for a second, decided it was nothing, and put my phone face down. I hadn't sent anyone about the furnace, but my mother was always convinced repairmen were circling, so I let it go. I want you to remember that man. I didn't know it yet, but I'd just been handed the first thread of the whole thing, and I'd set it down without pulling. The second was an envelope on our kitchen counter from Halstead Engineering Group, Nathan's company. He opened it while I was making coffee, and he went very still in the way he does when something real is happening, and then he turned it around so I could read it. A promotion, a significant one, and a relocation to the Charlotte office, 430 miles south, with a start date in the spring and a number attached that would change our lives. We stood in our kitchen and didn't say anything for a while, because we both understood, without a word, that the paper in his hand had just turned the conversation we kept not finishing into a decision we couldn't avoid. "It's a real number," Nathan finally said. "A real start date. We just have to decide what we're willing to leave." "You mean who?" I said.